Chiefs Kingdom. Let's get right to it, because this is the kind of Chiefs news update that can get people talking fast, and half the time, the reaction is louder than the reality. There's a lot flying around right now, but the big thing you need to understand is that not every headline deserves the same level of panic. That's where a lot of Kansas City Chiefs news gets twisted. People see a name, people see a visit, and suddenly the sky is falling. But when you slow it down and actually look at what's happening, the picture gets a whole lot clearer. So let's talk about this update the right way, with a little bit of football logic and a whole lot less noise. The first thing hanging over this conversation is Mike Dana and his visit with the Buffalo Bills. And yeah, on the surface, that sounds like one of those little Chiefs News Today stories that can make fans raise an eyebrow. He's been around the block. He's been part of this team for a long stretch. And anytime a familiar face even gets mentioned with another AFC contender, people start reaching for the alarm button like it's game day and the defense just jumped offside. But here's the truth. This is not some franchise-altering moment, and it's not something Chiefs fans need to spend the whole day stressing over. Visits happen. Interest happens. Teams do their due diligence. That does not mean the move is locked in, and it definitely does not mean Kansas City is suddenly losing a major piece of the foundation. Now, if you're being honest, the bigger point here is not just where Mike Dana might go. The bigger point is what his recent role has looked like in Kansas City. This is where a lot of the emotional reaction gets in the way of the football reality. Chiefs Kingdom can appreciate what a player has meant to the team and still admit that the player is not the same guy he once was. That is not disrespect. That is just the league. It chews up good players, spits out older players, and makes everybody earn it all over again. In this case, the production last season was not close to where it needed to be, and that matters. If a pass rusher is not giving you consistent pressure, not winning enough one-on-one matchups, and not changing the game the way you need him to, then the name on the back of the jersey carries more nostalgia than impact. And that's where Chiefs news becomes Chiefs reality. Kansas City had a defense last season that needed more juice up front. It needed more, but respect and roster value are two different things. One lives in the heart, the other lives on the field. And right now, the field is telling a pretty straightforward story. If Dana ends up elsewhere, Kansas City will move on. If he stays in the picture, fine. But this is not the sort of development that should have Chiefs Kingdom pacing around the house like there's a 2-minute drill underway. And honestly, that leads into a bigger mindset for Chiefs fans right now. Not every rumor is a crisis. Not every visit is a warning sign. Not every headline is a turning point. Sometimes Chiefs news today is just that. News. It is a data point, not a disaster. And once you start sorting the real stuff from the noise, the whole offseason feels a lot more manageable. So the Mike Dana chatter is worth knowing. Sure, it is worth keeping on your radar, absolutely. But it is not something that should have you rewriting the depth chart in your head before lunch. So here is the real question I want you to think about as you watch this story unfold. Do you see this as a meaningful concern, or just another offseason headline that sounds bigger than it really is? That is the kind of conversation Chiefs fans should be having, because the answer tells you a lot about how you read the team in general. Some fans react to every little ripple like it is a tidal wave. Other fans know better. They know the difference between a storyline and a true shift in the roster. And this one, at least for now, feels a lot more like the first category than the second. Alo Gilman is the kind of player whose words actually matter, and that is exactly why this part of the Chiefs News Today conversation hits different. This is not some random guy tossing out a polite little quote because he has to. This is a veteran who has been around football, been around strong coaching, and knows the difference between a staff that is simply occupying chairs and a staff that is actually building something. And what he said about the Kansas City Chiefs coaching staff should tell you a whole lot about why this team keeps attracting players who are willing to lean in and learn instead of just showing up and freelancing. When a player says the coaches are teachers and builders, that is not fluff. That is a real football compliment. It means the details matter. It means the communication is clear. It means players are being challenged, not babysat. And in the NFL, that is a big deal. Everybody can draw up a play. Everybody can talk a good game when the cameras are rolling. But not every staff can break things down in a way that actually helps a player grow, especially a veteran who has already seen a lot. That is why Gilman's comments matter so much in the broader Chiefs news picture. They reinforce the idea that Kansas City is still one of the best places in football for a player who wants to get better fast. And here is the part that should make Chiefs Kingdom smile a little. Gilman has worked around some real football minds. He has been around the Harbaugh environment, and that is not exactly a low bar. Those are serious football people, serious program builders, the kind of coaches who demand accountability and know how to get a team to buy in. So when somebody with that kind of background comes into Kansas City and basically says, "Yeah, this is the best teaching staff I've been around," that is not just praise. That is a stamp of approval. That is a loud, clear message that the Chiefs are not just winning because of talent. They are winning because the infrastructure is strong. That is one of the things Chiefs fans sometimes take for granted. You get so used to stability that you almost stop noticing how rare it is. In Kansas City Chiefs news, people love talking about the stars, the big plays, the highlight reels, and of course, that is fair. But the coaching staff is the engine under the hood. It is the part that keeps everything moving when the spotlight is on the quarterback, the receivers, or the defense's best name. And for a player like Gilman to say he is frustrated in a good way because he is having to absorb so much tells you the system is doing its job. Growth can be uncomfortable. It can be messy. It can make a veteran feel like a rookie again for a little while. But that is usually where real improvement lives. Think about what that means for the rest of the room, too. If a guy like Gilman is already talking about learning, diving deeper, and getting better, that sets a tone. It tells younger players that they are walking into a serious room, not a casual one. It tells them that production here is earned, not handed out. And if you are trying to build a championship defense, that is exactly the vibe you want. Nobody wants a room full of guys who think they know everything. That is how bad habits stick around. Kansas City wants the opposite. They want a room full of players who can be coached hard, coached smart, and coached into something better. That is also why this Chiefs News Today update feels bigger than just one quote. It is a reminder that the culture in Kansas City still has real force behind it. Players hear that. Agents hear that. Other teams hear that. And when a veteran defender says, "This staff is the best he has ever been around," that becomes part of the recruiting pitch, whether anybody says it out loud or not. Players want to go where they can win, sure, but they also want to go where they can improve. They want to go where the coaches will make them sharper, not just louder. Gilman just told you Kansas City is still one of those places. And because this is Chiefs news, it is worth noticing how that lines up with the bigger roster picture too. The Chiefs are not just trying to collect names, they are trying to stack guys who fit the room, fit the coaching, and fit the standard. That is how smart teams operate. They do not chase every shiny object. They build around belief, structure, and accountability. That is why this quote lands so well. It confirms that Kansas City is still a place where football gets taught the right way. So I want to ask you something while this is still fresh. When you hear a veteran speak this highly about the coaching staff, does that make you more confident in where the Chiefs are headed? Yes or no? Because to me, that is the kind of signal Chiefs Kingdom should pay attention to. Not just the flashy headlines, not just the rumor mill, but the stuff underneath that tells you whether the foundation is still strong. Now let's get into the part of this Chiefs News Today update that really matters for the bigger picture. Because this is where the noise starts to thin out and the real roster logic comes into focus. The off-field situation involving Dave Merritt has now taken a major turn. And that matters because he is not some background name hanging around the edges of the organization. He is a key part of the coaching staff, especially in a room where communication, teaching, and trust all matter at a premium. The latest update is that the case has been dismissed for now with the possibility of being refiled later. So the situation is not fully over in the broadest legal sense. But the current headline is still important. As of right now, he is no longer facing those charges. That is a meaningful development. And Chiefs Kingdom should know it because it affects a coach who has had a real hand in developing talent for this team. And that leads into something bigger because Kansas City Chiefs news is never just about one isolated event. It is about how all of these pieces stack together, eh? Coach gets clarity on one issue. A veteran defender gives major praise to the staff. The front office keeps scanning the market. The roster keeps shifting. That is how a team stays in motion without losing its identity. And right now, the identity is pretty clear. The Chiefs are still building around structure, coaching, and fit, not just name value. That is why this next stretch of the conversation matters so much. Look at the free agent side of things. There has been a lot of chatter around potential targets, and one of the bigger names that had been floating around was Jauan Jennings. But once the market price came into view, that idea basically answered itself. A one-year deal worth $13 million is not exactly small change, and when you put that next to Kansas City's current cap reality, the math gets pretty simple. You do not chase every receiver just because the name sounds good. You do not burn through limited cap space because a player is available. You have to be smart. You have to stay disciplined. That is how contending teams keep from making desperate moves that look exciting in May and ugly in December. And that is where the real Chiefs News Today lesson kicks in. The moves that look sexy on paper are not always the moves that make sense in the building. Kansas City fans know this better than most. The team has earned the right to be picky. It can be selective. It can wait for the right fit instead of forcing a splash for the sake of the headlines. That is not boring. That is championship behavior. The people who panic because the team does not sign every available wideout or every available veteran are missing the point. The Chiefs are not playing to win the rumor mill. They are playing to win games that matter. That same thinking is why a guy like Kenny Moore starts to make a lot of sense. He is the kind of veteran who could actually help stabilize a room that has gotten younger in a hurry. And that is not a small thing. When you are looking at a corner room that has a rookie expected to play a major role, another young defender potentially carrying big responsibilities, and a few guys still trying to carve out their exact fit, experience becomes valuable real fast. A veteran corner does more than just line up and take snaps. He talks. He settles people down. He spots details faster. He helps the room breathe. That is the kind of addition that does not always trend, but it can matter a lot over the course of a season. What makes this especially interesting for Chiefs fans is that it fits the overall direction of the roster. Kansas City is not trying to build a fragile unit that breaks the second one player gets hurt or one rookie makes a mistake. It is trying to build depth with purpose. It is trying to give the coaching staff enough options so it can adapt without scrambling. And when you combine that with the praise Gilman gave the coaching staff, the message gets louder. Players want to be coached here. Players notice the standard here. And smart veterans can see where they might fit into that picture. That is the kind of thing you should keep your eye on in Kansas City Chiefs news, because it often tells you more than the loudest headline does. The legal update around Dave Merritt matters because stability in the staff matters. The market price on Jawan Jennings matters because it tells you what is realistic and what is not. The Kenny Moore conversation matters because depth and experience are real assets, especially in a young room. None of these things are random. They are all pieces of the same bigger story, and that story is simple. The Chiefs are still operating with a championship mindset, and they are not rushing into moves just to fill airtime. So here is where I want to leave you on this one. Chiefs Kingdom should always stay alert, but it should not get dragged around by every rumor and every half-baked panic wave. The smartest fans know how to separate meaningful updates from empty noise. They know when to be concerned and when to stay patient. And right now, the board is still moving in Kansas City's favor because the coaching is strong, the roster is flexible, and the team still has options. That is a pretty good place to be. If this breakdown helped you make sense of the latest Chiefs news today, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with another Chiefs fan, and help us push toward 7,000 subscribers. That support really does matter, and it keeps Total Chiefs news growing the right way. And now I want to hear from you. What should the Chiefs prioritize next? A veteran corner, another receiver, or something else entirely?